I don't know if I'm gonna go to sleep or not.
So that's it. I'm done for the whole night. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
We're taking the approach that as we saw the ICU capacity grow, as we saw this variant move, it was different than the experts told me last week. It's simple as that. And as it excelled, and we got the call yesterday saying, hey, it's going quicker than expected, you have to be nimble, you have to be quick. I was decisive immediately. I said, start writing the orders.
That was Ontario Premier Doug Ford on Wednesday speaking about when he officially announced the stay-at-home order across the province of Ontario. It's one of several provinces dealing with increased restrictions because of the spread of COVID and the variants, pressured in large part by the public, obviously, but also by the medical community and public health professionals to respond, to step up their response. Let's go back for one more round at issue. Chantal Barry, I'm pointing out here, Raj. I'll start with you on this one, Chantal. I should say that what Mr. Ford, Premier Ford, said there is not actually accurate. That's not what the modeling showed that this was going to happen. Do you think that
It's like this
in
is
sort
the
of
third
a crisis
discussion I've
point
heard or
where it
something.
does seem as though health officials, public health officials,
And at
local
least
health
Chantal
officials are
Herbert,
having to put so much
Hebert,
pressure on
Hebert,
politicians, provincial
Hebert,
politicians to respond? It's
is
not
wearing the
just
same
Mr. Ford. It's also
clothes.
happened in Alberta and
I just don't understand.
should that be where the pressure is coming from?
I'm not sure I can answer that question. It is not happening in every province. And for sure, it's clear that collectively, though, premiers expected that the vaccine race versus variants would turn out in some other way, which it did not. And we don't know how it will turn out. We won't know for another number of weeks. But you can see that parties whose members expected that
I
we
know,
would
like,
be opening up at this point rather
shows
than
like the Phil
shutting down
Donahue
again
show
are
and
struggling more than
um,
parties like the NDP and
Sally
BC
Jessy
or
Raphael
the
and stuff like
Coalition
that.
Quebec.
They don't
Here,
just film one
I'm looking at
interview,
what's happening to
one
Premier Kenney
segment
in Alberta
each day.
with what one
It's like
quarter of
they
his caucus
do all the
writing
segments
an open
in
letter
one
to
day.
protest this latest
And
measures.
so, to make it
But
look
that
like they're
does
doing
give
new
you
segments each day,
a sense
they go
of
between
the
segments and change their
skepticism
clothes.
that the public is feeling towards changing, ever-changing
So I don't
recommendations
understand.
and
They
orders
keep having
from all
different
governments.
discussions why they're wearing the same
And I
clothes.
think the way out of this for any province is still the same as last week, and it is vaccinate as much as you can, as quickly as you can.
Andrew, is it ideologically driven then, the premiers that are unwilling to, hit the
You're
hammer as hard
alive,
as they can
right?
the first time and then have to be pressured? I mean, just days later, Premier Ford changed his mind on
I think
what had
there's
to
a
happen.
difference.
I don't think it's ideologically driven at the premier level. I think these are practical politicians who are weighing the pressures on them in various directions. Pressures from the business community,
I don't know.
quite understandable pressures. Pressures also from the medical community, and also understandable and welcome. I think there are, however, ideologues within some of the party, particularly on the conservative side, who have propagating the idea that we don't have to do this, that lockdowns are unnecessary or indeed harmful, that there's an easy way out, though they don't necessarily want to tell us what that is. The easy way
I just
out
think
is
like Johnny Carson was different every night. Like on
the vaccine
each
would
night
arrive
of
here in time
the
to
week.
defeat the variants. I think that was wishful thinking at best. And that's where you get into trouble, is when you raise expectations that you can't deliver on, and when you base policy on the best possible thing happening rather than planning for
I'm not sure.
a much less good thing happening. And I think that's where they're starting to get real turbulence with the public.
I say ideological in some ways because, Althea, it does seem like, at least from the Ford government and Kenny's government in Alberta, that there continues to be a lot of talk about personal freedoms. And while I understand that, and I respect that, at some point, that shouldn't be, I don't think, what drives
Chantal Hebert
to a public health crisis.
keeps showing her nostrils.
I
She
don't
keeps
think-
going like this. And they do look funny.
I don't think it's the same thing in Ontario as in Alberta.
But I think it's a ruse.
Yes, I think Premier Kenny, he talks a lot in his press conferences about how this is
This
a great
could be several
pull
segments
on him
taped in
terms
one
of,
day,
of
showing
that
different nights of the
language.
week.
Premier Forge talks about it
'Cause
more
the
in terms of shutting down
female on the
businesses
right,
and how much
the
that
far
hurts
right
him.
looks
But I
tired.
think, what these premiers, and frankly, many of the other premiers across the country,
So
and
maybe
just
this
hearing,
is
Premier Legault
maybe
today,
taping
they
ran
are not
late.
trying to kill the virus. They are just trying to live with the virus. And the wishful thinking that Andrew speaks of, that is their policy. It is, we're going to cross our fingers and hope for the best. And until the evidence comes forward that actually you have to move now, because you should have moved last week, but you were unwilling to take the measures required last week because the numbers of infections in schools were not quite high, or the ICU was not completely overloaded. So it's only when they are absolutely forced to act that they have acted, and it's sad that I'm thankful for the medical
Chantal
professionals,
Hebert,
especially a lot of
her eyes
doctors
are
around the
unusually
Toronto
close
area,
together.
who have spoken out and said this is what is happening inside our hospitals because basically legislatures are shut down. The opposition is like across the country.
She
Doesn't
reminds
seem
me
to be
just the
playing
tiniest
role.
bit of Prince
The
Charles.
media, we are not
Right?
experts. These people
Prince
are
Charles.
like our soldiers on the front line.
The one who's married to
and
Camilla Parker
they are
Bowles.
saying what they're experiencing, and we would not have that information if they did not have the guts to come out and tell us what's happening. And frankly, in many cases, I'm not sure
I guess that means
premiers
Lyle
would have
Lovett
acted
could be
if it wasn't
related
for
to
those
Prince
voices,
Charles.
telling the public what is happening.
Chantal, you wanted to do that?
Yes, except that in my province, I heard the chief medical officer, or whatever the title is here a week ago, sure that everything was under control and
Yeah.
things
She
were
keeps
looking
showing
up.
her
So,
nostrils. It's
I'm
weird.
not willing to put on politicians the entire blame for what they are being told by their own public health
I don't
experts.
understand.
And I do note that, yes, there is some pressure coming from the medical community, but if you listen carefully, for instance, on school closings or not, elementary schools, you will not hear an unanimous sound, and that's okay.
Martina
But
Navratilova
premiers
doesn't
are
have eyes close
also
together.
hearing a variety of voices from that side. It's not as if someone sits there and says, we have the wisdom, and we all agree that that's the wisdom. And
So the
this
DNA
will
could
get
be
to the
similar
people.
between Lyle Lovett
Is,
and
a
Prince
slightly
Charles
more
and not
complicated.
Martina.
The other issue is, and it
'Cause
goes
it's
back
a
not
matter
just
of
to
souls,
Jason Kenney. At some
not,
point, you need people to continue to follow you with your the political
not
leader.
biology.
And for that to happen, it's a tough balancing act.
Yeah. If you're gonna get the withdrawal though, it helps if you lead. I think too many of the premiers have been going no faster than they think the public is going on this. And I understand that both for political reasons and also because you wanna get by and you don't wanna have people just not complying with it. But if people in positions of leadership don't get out front and take the risk of doing so, risking their personal popularity among other things, then, or let's put it this way, if they had, we'd be in a lot better position. And Exhibit A for that would be the Atlantic provinces, where the premiers
Canada is
take
kind of a
much tougher
mystery,
measures.
probably
And I
to
don't
the
know
whole
if
United
they paid a
States,
huge
'cause
price for it politically. I think people actually
before
kind of
Tubi,
had
I've never
a
seen Canadian
relative
TV.
success story.
They don't even cover Canadian news.
Yeah, I would say
You know,
this is
the
just
US,
point the
and
benchmarks
they're
are
our
different.
neighbors.
In Atlantic Canada, they have gone with eradicating the virus. Let's try to shut things
You
down
just never get
completely,
word
get
on
rid
what's
of it,
happening in
start leading
Canada.
normal lives. Whereas everybody else seems to be going with the let's learn to live with it until we can't live
I
with
think
it anymore, and then pause, and then try to live with it
80%
again.
of our Saturday Night Live
These
comics
are
come
right
from
now.
Canada.
I'm just not sure that what fits for PEI fits for Ontario, but that's just me.
Okay, I gotta leave it there. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
You're looking here at Chicago's Fermi Lab, where researchers may have made a breakthrough discovery about a new force of nature, a fifth force. Now, going with all the ones we learned about in grade school, like gravity and magnetism, a new one. And if you can remember your high school physics, the strong and the weak forces that act at the subatomic level. And if you don't remember the lessons, not to worry, because there's nobody better to tell us about what's going on and the significance of it than Bob McDonald, the host of CBC Radio's Quirks and Quarks. He's up with the sun and back with us. Great to see you, Bob. Good morning.
Good morning, Heather. So good to be back.
Well, it's great to have you here, and particularly on this, because you're really going to need to explain it to me, and I dare say people watching us. This is one of the experiments that draws on nature, the fundamental things that make up our world, the places around us. Can you explain what they're looking
No,
at, what
it's
they've
just
been
so
doing for me?
weird.
Well, Heather, this experiment goes back
TV
over
may be trying to
2,000
fool
years to
everybody,
ancient Greeks who
but they've
wanted to
kept
know
saying
what
they're
the
trying to
fundamental
catch
elements
me
of the universe are.
in an
And they described
inaccuracy.
Earth, wind, fire, and water as the
So I don't
fundamental,
really know.
forces, which were also a great band in the 70s, Earth, Wind, and Fire. But they came up with the word atomos, which means uncuttable. That if you take fire and you cut it, you've still got fire. You take water, it's still water. So we get the word atom from that, and we later discovered that the world is made of atoms, and we thought those were fundamental particles. Then we started smashing them together, and we found that they're made of particles. You got electrons on the outside with an electric force. You got the nucleus being held by nuclear forces. Then we smash that, and we get quarks, and we get a whole family of particles and forces, and they're all described by this thing called the Standard Model. It's a mathematical description of words. Well, they just did an experiment. They just released results that there may be a new force and a new particle that we didn't know about. And if that's the case, we've got to adjust our model a little bit on the fundamental nature of the universe.
Okay, so tell me about this. Is this tiny subatomic particle, right? And tell me about it and this new force and what it appears to do.
Well, the particle that they were looking at is called a muon, which you get when you're breaking an atom apart. These muons appear for just a really, really short period of time, and then they decay into electrons. But they're electric. They're electric, which means that big ring that you saw at the beginning there, that's a big magnet. And when they're electric, they can cause these things to spin around in a certain way. And they predicted that they would wobble like tops at a certain frequency, and it turns out that they wobbled faster than they were supposed to. So there must be another force acting on them that we don't know about. And if there's a new force, there may be a new particle that was acting on them. So this is kind of interesting. If there's a new force out there that we didn't know about, what does that force do? And if I could answer that question, I would win the Nobel Prize right now.
No, we don't know, but this is what they're studying.
Yes, and it goes back to the very beginning. This force might work on how you get particles, how you make things, how you go from energy into things like muons. And it goes back to the Big Bang, because there's a lot we don't know about how we went from something that was super hot and super dense, so much so we can't even describe it. It was pure energy, and then that turned into these particles, their forces, stars, planets, people, and then things that we don't understand, like dark matter. Where did that come from? How do you get that? Antimatter, where did it go? So this force might work at that level where you get, sort of how did the universe come to be? That's what's exciting about it. And it might give us an indication into that. But there's one other thing, Heather, that I find interesting about this. We play with these forces. When we play with electrons, the electric force, we get electricity. We get light. We get radio waves. All the technology that you and I are using right now is just wiggling electrons around. When you release the nuclear force, you get nuclear energy. We get so much out of that. So could we manipulate, if there's a new force, could we play with that? What would that lead to? I have no idea, but it's really neat that there's something out there we don't know, and that's why we need to do more experiments to find out what's going on here. It's really fundamental science.
Well, it is, and it's been fascinating that the scientists there at Fermi, we've been looking at pictures of their lab, that they've been able to make this discovery. So explain, obviously there's a lot still unknown, but the headlines about this, people are rather effusive that this could rewrite our understanding of the basic laws of physics. What are the implications here, Bob?
Well, this model that we have called the Standard Model might have a new element now. Now, that doesn't mean that you throw the model away and you start from zero. It means that the model has to be refined. But that's been the story all along. That's how science works. That's what we've been doing for the last 2,000 years. You refine the model. You put in a new ingredient and get more precise in how we describe the universe. So the physicists are excited about this, but I should mention that this still needs to be proven. They don't have confidence yet that this is actually true. They need to do more experiments. Other labs going to try this and see if it's true, and then go from there. So it's all part of the process of scientific discovery. You stand on the shoulders of giants, and you keep refining your model to get more and more. There's still a lot we don't know about the universe. Remember, dark matter and dark energy, which we have no idea what they are, they make up
95% of the universe. 95% of the universe, we don't know what they are. So there's still a lot we don't know. So when something new comes along, that's why everybody gets excited.
Well, I get excited when you come in and help us understand what we don't know. So thank you for this morning, and we'll check back with you on this and other things, Bob. Great to see you this morning. We'll be listening on Quirks and Quarks.
Great to be back.
First, get your ticket, then come back for your shot. It's a new strategy in Quebec to give the AstraZeneca vaccine to any adult who's old enough. The message, if you don't mind getting this shot, then just show up.
AstraZeneca is going to do its job. It was not the vaccine that I dreamed of, but I think it's important.
Indeed, most people at this clinic seem to have heard the news. The reports of rare blood clots in Europe leading Canada to stop giving the AstraZeneca vaccine to anyone under 55 and throwing a wrench in a rollout.
We're running into a little bit of a dilemma here in Regina.
In Saskatchewan, they may start offering Pfizer at this drive-through clinic. So far, it's only been AstraZeneca, and demand has dried up. There's barely a car in sight. In this pic shared by Jan Hansen.
I'm not sure if there's a lack of understanding or if there's overwhelming skepticism. If people are waiting for something better, I'm ready for my second dose.
Nearly 2 million AstraZeneca doses have been delivered to Canada, but only a fraction of those have been administered. Some provinces are ramping up shots in pharmacies, but what about younger adults who got one dose and now can't get another?
For the time being, I think that folks are fine. I think that other options could be looked at.
Officials are still considering the effects of mixing doses, meaning those with one shot of AstraZeneca could receive another vaccine altogether. Melissa Lee hopes with the second dose she'll get her life back. Her multiple sclerosis treatment leaves her vulnerable to infection.
We're sort of left with not a lot of information, and we're waiting on studies on whether or not we can continue with mixing doses. So all in all, it's a lot of uncertainty.
Supply and demand won't always match up, so provinces had better keep getting creative. Thomas Dagg, CBC News, Toronto.
Sent Rahul Tandon to hospital last month.
Pain was excruciating. I could not sit. I could not stand.
He's about to go under the knife. Now he'll have to wait.
Yeah, I just got canceled today.
There was already a backlog of 250,000 necessary operations. Now only emergency surgeries for strokes, heart attacks, cancer, and trauma are on go. Elective and non-emergency surgeries like hip and knee replacements on hold. All to make space in ICUs, bracing for the mounting COVID wave. A grim sign of what's to come. Last night, a letter from the body that governs doctors, as protocols are being drawn up on who gets care and who doesn't. These are extraordinary times that require extraordinary decision-making.
Looking for Euro news. I'm not finding it.
We're apart, but we can be together by celebrating other people.
I could have asked her.
it's there. I reset it by going home on Roku.
Navy. He didn't have long before he had to give his service to the Queen. And
Oh,
he
Prince
did,
Philip died.
learning to walk behind her at public engagements, to call her mom in public as well. Now, when it comes to his funeral, because of the COVID pandemic here in the UK, and according to his wishes, there'll be no state funeral, so no images of crowds lining the streets as we might once have expected, and no lying in state, so no chance for people to go and see him at Windsor Castle. Instead, his funeral will be at St George's Chapel at Windsor. It will be a much smaller affair. We understand there'll be a digital book of condolence and the possibility of a memorial service a little bit further down the line.
Well, news of Prince Philip's passing has travelled across the globe, and world leaders have been paying tribute online. Matthew in the Cube has more.
Indeed, Anja, so many tributes, so many world leaders and public figures sharing their memories of His Royal Highness Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh. This published on the website of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, their arch-rival organisation, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. A simple tribute saying, thank you for your service, you will be greatly missed. Of course, a lot of the focus has been on the United Kingdom, but Prince Philip's roots and his heritage, a lot of it was based in the continent in Europe. He was born onto his family's dining room table on the Greek island of Corfu. His grandfather had moved there from Denmark in the 1860s, and his mother was a descendant of German princes. And across Europe, across the European Union, world leaders have been paying their respects online. The European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, one of the first to say that she was so saddened to hear of the passing of His Royal Highness Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh. Those sentiments shared by David Sassoli, the President of the European Parliament. The spokesperson for the German Chancellor, Angela Merkel, posting online saying that Prince Philip and his friendship with Germany, his straightforwardness and his sense of duty will not be forgotten. French President Emmanuel Macron, another world leader, who said that Prince Philip was a respectful man who lived an exemplary life defined by bravery, a sense of duty and commitment to both the youth and to the environment. So many other world leaders, from the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan to the Russian President Vladimir Putin, and indeed across the Atlantic Ocean, the United States President Joe Biden publishing a very heartfelt message on his official website as well as on social media, in which he says that Prince Philip's legacy will live on not just through his family, but also through all his charitable endeavours. So many people remembering the Duke of Edinburgh for his endeavours beyond his royal service. And indeed, you have other members of the Commonwealth of Nations, such as the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, Narendra Modi of India, as well as Scott Morrison, the Australian Prime Minister. Angela, it really is noticeable how widespread these tributes and condolences are pouring in from. So many people wanting to pay their respects, but also pay tribute and offer their thoughts and prayers towards Queen Elizabeth II and the royal family, and indeed the British people at this time of mourning following the passing of Prince Philip.
Matthew, thank you very much. Well, for many people, Prince Philip will be remembered for his patronage of several charitable organisations, most notably the Duke of Edinburgh Award. But he also had a lifelong interest in conservation and for decades was involved with World Wildlife Fund for Nature. And I'm joined now by Marco Lambertini, the Director General of WWF International. Marco, thank you very much for joining us on the programme. Now, during the time that Prince Philip spent with your organisation, what did he achieve?
Let me just first say that today is truly a sad day for WWF, and Prince Philip helped establish WWF 6 years ago. In fact, this very month in April 1961. So he's been a very important figure for the organization, associated with us for all our 60 years of our history. He was such a deeply and genuinely passionate a person about nature, and on top of that, he was a very active, tireless, I would say, advocate for the environment. And in that sense has helped a lot WWF and other organizations, and frankly, the whole conservation cause to grow over the years, in popularity, in support. He has been offering his voice, his position, his influence, in order to raise awareness for the environment for 60 years, advocating for wildlife and the environment, with head of states, with CEOs of large companies, with religious leaders. So he's been a truly influential and genuine voice for the environment, and early environmentalist.
What was it about this organisation specifically that really appealed to Prince Philip?
I think he and a few others at the time, in '61, they felt it was needed to coordinate a global response to what he saw as an accelerating crisis of nature, accelerating destruction of nature. And I think he was a true visionary in that sense, but also in seeing that by losing nature, we would actually affect humanity itself. So he thought that creating a global organization like WWF would have actually stimulated a global coordinated action that actually even today we still see so necessary vis-à-vis climate change and the nature loss challenges of today.
And Marco as well, his commitment to highlighting environmental issues, absolutely unquestionable, but at times there were some contradictions in his behaviour, weren't there, in the early years?
Well, it's difficult to judge, right? It was different contexts, different culture, different times, different sensitivities. What is really clear, however, that his personality may have been distinct and with special way of using words sometimes, but that is not taking away anything from his genuine and deep commitment to something that, frankly, despite his great legacy and great contribution to the environment together, he has passed on to his children and their children today. And it is bound to
Marco, certainly something to pass on to younger members of the royal family. Thanks very much for joining us on. Well, still to come on the programme, Iran nuclear talks start on a positive note in Vienna. We'll have more on that after the break. Looking for trustworthy climate coverage? Sign up for our green newsletter. Get eco-news and green views delivered straight to your inbox. Sign up today on euronews.com/pudding. Welcome back to the programme. The European Medicines Agency is investigating another COVID-19 vaccine over its potential side effects. This time, the shot made by Johnson & Johnson. The EMA says 4 serious cases of unusual clots combined with low blood platelet counts were reported in people
one-shot vaccine is only being used in America at the moment, but both the Johnson & Johnson dose and the AstraZeneca inoculation use the same type of technology. One case of unusual blood clotting was during the trials and the others were during the vaccination rollout. Around 100 million J&J shots should be delivered to the States by the end of May. Meanwhile, the European Medicines Agency says it's looking into the 4 cases who took the J&J dose as one was fatal. The EMA has also begun looking into whether fluid leaks from blood vessels when taking the AstraZeneca inoculation. 5 cases were reported where blood pressure dropped and tissue became swollen. And it's reported by the AFP news agency that the European Commission will negotiate ordering 1.8 billion doses of the second-generation COVID-19 vaccines. It's hoped they'll start to be delivered later this year and then for the next couple of years.
We'll go.
Louise Minor, Euronews.
There it is.
Over the past week, Northern Ireland has witnessed some of its worst violence for several years. Pleas for calm from leaders haven't been listened to, as a mixture of anger at police and post-Brexit trade rules continues to fan community tensions. Shona Murray reports.
Over a week of riots and violent clashes has plunged the city of Belfast and parts of Northern Ireland into a crisis not seen since the dark days of the conflict there. Former Irish Prime Minister John Bruton says the scenes are similar to the early days of the conflict which led to 30 years of bloodshed.
I served in politics since 1969 when the Troubles really started. And this brings me right back to those Troubles. And it started with rioting in the late 60s. And it gradually escalated into something far, far worse than rioting. There is a risk that we're into the same cycle again. And it is because of a lack of attention in London to the problems of Northern Ireland.
Tensions have been rising since the Brexit vote, which many warned could destabilise the peace that came with the Good Friday Agreement in 1998. In addition, a surge in other sectarian tensions unrelated to Brexit have also intensified in the recent weeks, following also the implementation of the Northern Ireland Protocol, which allowed the UK to leave the EU without putting a border on the island of Ireland. The UK and EU instead agreed to put a customs border between Britain and Northern Ireland. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson opted for a hard Brexit, meaning there are high levels of checks on the sea border. Now the pro-UK unionist community is demanding the protocol be scrapped.
They feel that any controls, even controls of a highly bureaucratic character on gardening goods and things like that, that these symbolise a weakening of the union between Northern Ireland and the UK. And symbols, unfortunately, are enormously important in Northern Ireland. It very often is the symbols for the reality of life that that's a legacy of 300 years, 400 years of strife.
Efforts are now underway to settle tensions politically, including a call from US President Joe Biden for all sides to resort to dialogue. Shona Murray, Euronews.
Signatories to the 2015 Iran nuclear deal are continuing talks in Vienna. They're trying to find a path to lifting economic sanctions on Iran in return for curbs to its nuclear program. Neil O'Reilly reports.
After several days of talks, encouraging signals for the first tentative steps to revive the Iran nuclear deal. The US withdrawal and Tehran's response had left it hanging by a thread. The meetings in Vienna, involving European, Russian and Chinese delegates, are trying to balance the two sides' concerns and interests, mapping a way forward for further dialogue. But it won't be easy.
This is just the beginning. It's just the beginning, and it is a bit of a race against time. So it will not be easy. Getting the sequencing right between the steps of the two parties will not be easy, which means that the European role in mediation is actually going to be of key importance, and also considering that time is of the essence, given that there is an Iranian presidential election looming in the summer.
Negotiators fear internal political tensions ahead of the election could undermine the talks, and that the result could deliver an even more hardline leadership. But for now, there's optimism. Iran's coincidental release of a South Korean tanker it had been holding for months seen as a gesture of the country's willingness to continue with the negotiations. Neil O'Reilly, Euronews.
From his charity work to his efforts trying to modernise the monarchy, we'll be looking at the legacy Prince Philip leaves behind. That's after the break.
This week on Euronews.
On Real Economy, digital work platforms like food delivery apps are transforming how we buy goods and services, but are workers being treated fairly?
Je suis en Espagne.
I'm in Spain, where a new law is being proposed that would class all riders for digital delivery platforms as employees.
Platform work, to regulate or not to regulate? That's the question in Real Economy this week on Euronews and Euronews.com.
This Mother's Day, millions of moms will be forced to make pretend-like face. The face with the too wide smile. And that thing with the eyebrows. A face that says, I love you, but I don't love this.
Welcome back to Euronews Now. Part of Prince Philip's legacy will no doubt be the Duke of Edinburgh Award, a scheme which has taught millions of young people key life skills. The programme challenges adolescents to complete a series of self-improvement exercises, usually including an expedition spanning several days. The Duke founded the award in the UK, but it's since expanded to over 100. Well, earlier I spoke to John May, the Secretary General of the Duke of Edinburgh's International Award Foundation, and he says the scheme has allowed millions of young people to aim high and to find their place in the world.
There are millions of young people who have him to thank for putting them on the right road, the right path. And I'm wearing my little gold badge here because I'm one of those young people. When I was 18 years old, I had the opportunity to do my gold Duke of Edinburgh's award, and it set me on my career path. So I have the Duke personally to thank for what I've done with my life.
And of course that would be the sentiment shared among many, certainly young people too, won't it? That legacy that he's left behind. How would you describe it?
I think the way that I would describe it is that he has left a legacy that allows young people to aim high, to aspire, and to reach their aspirations. The great thing about the Duke of Edinburgh's award is that it isn't a machine that just processes young people through a particular program. What the award does is it helps young people to set their own targets about what they want to do with their lives. And we talk about a program, but maybe I should probably really refer to 1 million programs, because there's 1 million young people at the moment who are doing their Duke of Edinburgh Award. It's not always called the Duke of Edinburgh Award either. If you live, for instance, in the Netherlands, you'll know it as the International Award for Young People. And in some countries, it's called the President's Award. But all over the world, in 130 countries or more, there are young people who are doing their award and, because of it, finding their purpose, their passion, and their place in the world.
Thank you for watching Euronews Now. Well, we leave you with a no comment from Windsor Castle and Buckingham Palace, where people gathered to pay their respect to the late Prince Philip, the longest-serving royal consort in British history.
This week on Euronews.
He's the 3-star Michelin chef, also known as the master of modern Italian cuisine.
But this we need a lot of help, not only by the government, by the people coming very quickly back to normally eating in the restaurants.
Heinz Beck talks about getting the restaurant business back on its feet, as well as his illustrious career. That's this week on Interview on Euronews and Euronews.com.
This Mother's Day, millions of moms will be forced to make pretend-like face. The face with the too wide smile. And that thing with the eyebrows. A face that says, I love you, but I don't love this. So put an end to pretend-like face with the Books Company. Long-lasting, farm-fresh flowers Mom really loves. The Books Company.
Hello and welcome to Euronews Now. I'm Angela Barnes. Here's our top stories. Prince Philip, the husband of Queen Elizabeth and patriarch of the British royal family, has died at the age of 99. Tributes are laid and people gather outside Windsor Castle, where the Duke of Edinburgh passed away.
And condolences pour in from the UK and abroad as the world comes to terms with news of his passing.
can't do that much with my
vaccine
arm
is being scrutinised by the
today.
European Medicines Agency after reports of blood clots.
Stuff.
We begin with the news from the UK that Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, has died. He passed away peacefully in Windsor Castle on Friday at the age of 99. White flags fly at half-mast and tributes have poured in from around the world. Prime Minister Boris Johnson says that by any measure, the Prince had lived an extraordinary life. And EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has extended her sympathies to the Queen, as Luke Hanrahan reports.
Despite restrictions preventing gatherings, hundreds congregated to pay their respects to Prince Philip. People like Richard Cleary, who donned a suit and tie especially to drop off a bunch of flowers at the gates of Buckingham Palace.
I don't wear this day to day. I work from home. I don't walk the dog wearing this. But I think at the times of national mourning, it just felt right.
For the majority of Brits, Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, has been an ever-present. His death marks the end of an era of public service.
Checked our phones and it was like, oh my goodness, this has just happened. So it's really bizarre actually, because you're seeing history breaking right in front of you.
I think we were all expecting it.
I'm gonna stop recording and upload this.
Going on